My mother-in-law and sister-in-law spread lies about me, and my husband threw me out without even hearing my side of the story. I was treated horribly by my husband and his family for months, and finally made my way away from that family, but then they thought they could come back and traumatize me again. But I'm really happy to say that I stood up for myself and my baby daughter. I met my ex, Jack, 38, male, when we were both living in France in our 20s. I'm half Canadian and French, and Jack is American. He was working on his PhD, and I was living with family and interning as a photographer for a local newspaper when we met. I met him by chance at his university and was just blown away by how charming and smart he was. We met through a mutual friend, and after months of hanging out together in groups, I gathered the courage to ask him out, and he said yes. One date led to another, and we got into a relationship. Thinking about those days is so strange now because it feels like another life, because of how different everything is now and how my husband changed from the brilliant, funny guy I fell in love with to the seemingly heartless and totally selfish guy he turned out to be. Our relationship was really nice in the beginning. We dated for almost a year before moving in together. After that, we lived together for 2 years. By the end of that, Jack finished his PhD and it was time for him to move back to the States. We knew this was coming, of course, and had discussed the possibility of me moving to the States with him. For reference, I am originally from Canada and was actually supposed to leave France earlier, but then Jack and I got serious, and I decided to extend my stay, at least until his PhD was finished. I wish I could go back and tell myself to just stick to my plans, but it is what it is, I guess. Anyway, long story short, Jack proposed, and I decided to leave behind both my family and work in France, and also my family back in Canada, and move to the States with Jack. I was young and in love, and was convinced that Jack would totally do the same for me if he had to. I was really hopeful about our future together, but things started to fall apart rapidly after we moved to the US. When we first moved, my husband and I had no place to live. It was my first time in the US as well, so to make things easier until we found a place of our own, we decided to live with Jack's family. That was probably the worst possible decision we could have made, but of course, I didn't know that back then. Jack's family includes his mom, his sister and niece, and his older brother. My brother-in-law is a really decent guy. He lived halfway across the country with his wife, and I saw him only once, and both he and his wife were very kind to me. I wish I could say the same about my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, but luck was really not on my side. During the first few months of our stay in the US, Jack and I lived at his mom's place, my sister-in-law. Julia was also living with us because she had recently divorced her husband and needed help with her daughter, who was very young. I knew about this before I moved in with them, of course, and didn't mind at all. I had a big family growing up, so in my head it was like, the more people, the merrier. Another stupid mistake. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law were a bit cold towards me from the very beginning. It's not like they were mean to me or something, but their behavior always seemed a bit fake and passive-aggressive. Honestly, for the first few weeks, I often felt like I was imagining the whole thing because they were always polite to me to my face. Then, after a few weeks, when I started to be sure that they didn't like me, I told myself that maybe they'll warm up to me as they got to know me, but they never really did. Eventually, I told Jack about how I felt. His reaction just left me more confused than I was before. He said that it was all in my head and I was wrong because his mom and sister loved me. He said that maybe it was a cultural difference, being as I had spent all of my life in either Canada or France, and just didn't know how Americans were. I wasn't very convinced, but agreed, and just put more effort towards warming up to my sister-in-law and mother-in-law. Safe to say, it didn't work. Thankfully, after around 3 months of living in that house, Jack and I found a place to live by ourselves. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law weren't very happy about this and tried to make us stay longer, even suggesting that we could just stay there until we got married. But I was completely against that and convinced Jack to move out. This was another thing that made my sister-in-law and mother-in-law hate me, I guess. I can't think of any other reasons why they were always so cold to me, but at that point, I had given up on the possibility of us having anything more than a civil relationship. So Jack and I moved out and started living together in a small but nice apartment. He found a teaching job, and I also started looking for work. We still saw my mother-in-law and sister-in-law a lot as they lived pretty close, and we often had dinners together, but I didn't mind putting up with them a few times for a couple of hours. Shortly after Jack and I moved out, I found out I was 3 weeks pregnant. We weren't planning to have a baby anytime soon at that point and had even postponed the wedding until we were more financially stable, but I was still happy at the news. Even Jack seemed excited and told me that maybe this was a sign that good things were coming for him. We had a small ceremony and got married at the courthouse. I was also happy, thinking that maybe a baby would make my mother-in-law and sister-in-law finally warm up to me, but the way things turned out, it was the exact opposite. We had our first full-blown fight when I first found out that I was pregnant. Jack and I planned to surprise them by showing up with the babies first. Ultrasound in a cute frame. We were waiting in the living room while my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were out shopping, and as fate would have it, they literally walked into the house talking about me. My sister-in-law was clearly mocking me, using a terrible French accent, and they were both saying stuff like how I act better than everyone else because I'm from Europe, and my mother-in-law, in particular, said some other not-so-nice things. I was in tears, and Jack turned completely red in the face and ran out to the foyer to confront them. A nasty confrontation followed, which resulted in Jack and me storming out of that house. We had no contact for the next couple of months, and I thought that would be the end of it, but when I was around 5 months pregnant, my mother-in-law called Jack, apologizing to him, and asked him to go over to talk. I didn't want to go, but Jack did. I don't really know what they spoke about, but when he came back, Jack acted off for some reason. I tried to make him talk, but he wouldn't say anything and was a bit standoffish. I thought maybe he had a fight with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law again, and decided to just give him some space, hoping he would be himself again. Long story short, he didn't. He kept acting weird for around a week before I finally had enough and decided to confront him. At first, he denied everything, but I kept pestering him until he finally snapped and said that his family had told him everything. I was confused and asked him what he meant, and he said that I should stop lying and that he knows how I really feel. More confusion and pestering from my end, and he said that his sister overheard me speaking to my mom one day about how I hate being in the US, living with Jack's family, and that I hate his mom and sister because they're dirty rednecks. I was horrified, because I would never say that to anyone, let alone people I considered family. I admit that I did sometimes talk to my family about finding it a little difficult to adjust in the States, but I never insulted anyone and certainly did not think that I was being overheard. I tried to make Jack listen to me, but he was adamant that his mom and sister would never lie to him and that I needed to apologize to them. We had a huge fight that led to him storming out of our apartment. I had a complete breakdown. It was my first pregnancy, and things were difficult already, and this was just one more thing I really could not deal with. I stayed up all night waiting for him to come back, but he didn't. I finally fell asleep and woke up in the afternoon to a text from him saying that he'd come back when I was ready to apologize. I had enough at that point. I needed to speak to him, so I lied about wanting to apologize. He showed up in an hour with his mom and sis in tow, looking infuriatingly smug. The moment they sat down in the living room, I went on a full-on rage and started ranting and yelling about everything they had put me through, ever since I moved there. There was a lot of back and forth with my sister-in-law, mother-in-law actively calling me a liar and saying that all of this was some plan I had to take Jack away with me to Europe, and calling me a nasty foreigner. I was baffled by that. I looked at Jack and asked if he was going to defend me, and he just looked away and said that maybe it would be best if I left the apartment for a bit. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but at that point my pride had finally kicked in. I was fed up with constant emotional abuse and lies and decided to finally take action. I packed some of my things and checked into a hotel. I spoke to my parents and decided to return to Canada to be with them during my pregnancy. I also divorced Jack as soon as I could. After moving out, the process was easy, as he didn't put up a fight, and we both wanted to get away from each other as soon as possible. The months went on, and I thankfully had a beautiful baby girl a month ago. But here's the kicker. A few weeks after my daughter was born, Jack sent me a letter asking that I should return his daughter because he wanted her to be with him and his mother. This has just infuriated me. After all the pain they have caused, they had the audacity to demand my child. There was no way I was going to let them take my daughter away from me, and I wanted to go to the States and directly confront them. But my parents and friends were saying I should just let our lawyers handle this. But I kept reading the letter and got angrier and angrier until I finally booked a flight to the United States to confront Jack and his family. I had no doubts that this confrontation would not be easy. Jack, my mother-in-law, and sister-in-law sat in the living room, and there was this really visible sense of arrogance about them. They believed they could continue to control my life even after all the pain they had caused me. I got so angry that I took the letter demanding custody from my bag and tore it into pieces right in front of them. The look of shock and disbelief on their faces was deeply satisfying. I felt a rush of empowerment knowing that I was taking control of my own life and the life of my child. I told them that I would sue all of them for the emotional abuse they put me through while I was pregnant, and leaving me practically stranded without any financial help when they kicked me out. I told him that he would never take my child away from me, and that she was a Canadian citizen anyway, and if they were willing to go through the legal battle of trying to win her, I was up for it. The shock and disbelief on their faces was everything. I don't think they ever expected me to get that assertive, Jack stammered. trying to defend his family's actions and his belief in their version of events. He claimed that his family only wanted what was best for him and the baby, but I had enough of that crap. I knew that they had manipulated him with their false stories about me. He also tried to say some nonsense about how he has rights as the father, and I told him that he's hardly a father, and that I'm sure that the courts would also agree. I also threatened to go on social media and expose their whole family about how they treated a pregnant woman who was new to the country and how his employers would really not like that. I made it clear to Jack that I would never engage in their games or apologize for something I had never said. The emotional abuse I had endured was real, and I was not willing to subject my child to that toxic environment. I was prepared to take legal action to protect my child, and I was not afraid to do so. I also knew that Jack wouldn't pass any of the requirements needed for him to get custody of my child. So I wasn't afraid of that either. My words were met with a mix of anger, disbelief, and frustration from Jack and his family. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law started screaming and said that marrying me was the worst decision that Jack could have ever made. And they always knew that I was a vindictive and evil woman. I just laughed at their faces and said that I was sorry that they had nothing better to do in their lives than to villainize a woman who had literally never done anything wrong to them. They looked shocked at my words. Maybe they had expected me to back down or try to placate them like I used to in the first few months of my pregnancy, but that woman was long gone, and she is never coming back again. I stormed out of that house and started the legal process of protecting my rights as a mother and terminating Jack's parental rights. I consulted with lawyers in both Canada and the US. This has proven to be really difficult, but I am determined to prove I am the best parent for my child, and I will not allow Jack or his family to take that away from me. Things have only just started and might take a while. I'll try to keep you guys updated. Jack reached out to me several times, saying that it is unfair to take his daughter away from him because of how our relationship turned out, and that I should let him have access to my little girl's life, and that he'd stay out of my hair and agree to my conditions. His mom and sister also keep saying that I'm a horrible mother for keeping my child away from her father. My perspective is that a coward like him doesn't deserve to have my daughter in his life. AITA for wanting exclusive parental rights? Update 1. Thank you so much for all your advice and kind words. Honestly, I was just ranting to the internet because the people in my life have seen things progress from the beginning, and I didn't want to tire anyone out or make it seem like this is the only thing I can talk about. Your words of love and support really mean the world to me, and it warms my heart to get DMs from women who have been through similar situations and were able to protect themselves and their kids. I'm still going through your comments, and even if I can't reply to all of them, I'm trying to read as many as I can, and I truly am grateful to each one of you. A lot of people have been asking me about my relationship with Jack and why everything changed all of a sudden after I moved to the States. Honestly, I don't really know either, but I'm guessing that our lifestyle was so different back in France that maybe Jack forgot how much things would change back in the States. Also, he was not too happy about the pregnancy, so all these things made it really easy for his mom and sister to manipulate him. Why they never liked me is another mystery. They just wanted an all-American girl for Jack, and I guess I was too foreign for them or something. My mom says that my sister-in-law was probably jealous of me or something, but I think she only says that to make me feel better. In hindsight, I should have really seen the red flags in Jack's behavior earlier than I did. The fact that he kept telling me that I was imagining his mom and sister's dismissive behavior was wrong and manipulative. But, well, lesson learned, I guess. And yes, I was unemployed while I was in the States. I was looking for a job, but then I found out I was pregnant and decided just to take a break till I had the baby and recovered from the whole childbirth experience. Makes it even crazier because I literally uprooted my life and my career because I loved that man so much, and he couldn't even stand up for me when it actually counted. Utterly disgusting and pathetic of him. The good news is that I do have a great job now and work for a magazine, and more importantly, I know that I cannot risk my career for anything ever again. Silver linings, I guess, if you can call them that. Update 2. Hi to everyone who might still be interested. I've gotten so many DMs and comments asking what happened. Sorry for the delay, but so much was happening that I just didn't have any time. It's been almost 8 months since my last update, and I'm sorry to leave you guys waiting. If anyone's still interested, it took a long time to get things done, but I'm happy to report that Jack now has no rights over my daughter. Throughout the legal proceedings, I faced an avalanche of false accusations and attempts to discredit my character. Jack's family spared no effort in painting me as an unfit mother, using every lie and manipulation tactic, but I was prepared for their tactics, and I had evidence to counter their claims. As for them, all they had were false words. It's insane to me that they even took things to court. I know it was my mother-in-law who pushed Jack to that extent. The emotional toll of the legal battle has been immense. It was a constant struggle to maintain my composure and focus on what truly mattered, my child's well-being. I am so grateful for the support of my family and friends who stood by me throughout the ordeal. Their unwavering belief in me gave me the strength to persevere. The evidence of emotional abuse and manipulation was undeniable, and the judge recognized the toxic environment that Jack's family had created. It was a bittersweet victory, knowing that my child's safety was at the forefront. The court ultimately ruled in my favor, granting me full custody of my child. It was a moment of triumph and relief, knowing that I could now provide a loving and stable environment for my child. I'm writing this post because I now finally have secured my child's future and safety and wanted to share my story with any other moms who might be in a difficult situation similar to mine. Thanks for reading along. Update 3. Some people have asked what evidence I used against Jack in court. Well, that was a really difficult, complicated, and long process. I would not recommend it to the faint-hearted because it definitely takes a toll, but I did what I had to do. And also because the circumstances were in my favor. But I had text messages going back to my first few months of pregnancy to my friends and my mom, where I constantly went on about how my mother-in-law and sister-in-law made me feel. But the biggest piece of evidence was my recorded fight with Jack, mother-in-law, and sister-in-law right before they kicked me out of the apartment. I think I already mentioned in my original post that I had spoken to my friends about Jack storming out, and almost all of them had told me to confront him as soon as I could. Luckily, one of my friends had suggested that I should record the whole interaction as it could come in handy if they later tried to deny that they were awful to me. I'm so glad I listened to her and grateful for her amazing foresight. Also, the fact that Jack kicked me out while I was helpless and vulnerable and made no contact with me throughout the duration of my pregnancy or even at the birth of my daughter didn't really paint a great picture of him. This paired with the fact that none of my daughter's legal documents mentioned him as the father also worked in my favor. That's another thing I made sure to do because somewhere in me, I knew that crazy guy would try to come between me and my daughter. I'm just grateful for my amazing lawyers who fought for me and got me and my daughter what we deserve. Honestly, Jack was a terrible partner and even worse father, so although the legal procedure took forever and was expensive, I had faith that the court would recognize that I was obviously the better parent for my daughter and wouldn't take her away from me. Some of you have also asked if I'm planning to tell my daughter about Jack. Well, I think she's way too young for me to worry about all that, and I don't really have any solid plans yet, but I do know that I'll tell her the truth about what happened when she's old enough to understand these things. For now, I have a happy and healthy baby girl with loving grandparents and many aunts and uncles, and I'm sure that she is not missing out on any type of love or affection. I really do wish that she could have grown up with her dad and a happy set of parents. But I'll do my best to be a good mom and make sure that she never feels left out. I have not been in contact with Jack, and I don't think I ever will or ever want to be. My daughter is healthy and the happiest, goofiest kid ever, and I've actually started seeing someone recently. We're taking it very slowly, which is how I prefer it to be now that my life is finally stable enough for a relationship. Thanks again for all the love and support that you've sent my way, and for reading along so patiently.